According to most sources, Joseph Stalin was one of the worst dictators the world has ever seen, murdering millions of his own people and making them live in constant fear and paranoia. Now, have you ever stopped to wonder if there was ever anything in his life that affected him and made him into the person he's known as in the history textbooks? Actually, many factors have affected the dictator. Among these are his upbringing during his childhood, insecurities he developed over time, and his mental well-being. Joseph, who was also known as Yosef Vissarionovich Yugashvili, was born in the small town of Gori, which is in the nowadays Republic of Georgia. He was the only surviving of 4 children to a cobbler father and a maid mother, who had 2 very different views on how to raise their son. His father, on one hand, thought his son would be fine off in life as a cobbler, living the working class life. On the other hand, his mother wanted the best for him, and wanted for Joseph to live off well as a priest. Another thing to add was that Stalin's father used to have a business which ended up in ruins because of alcoholic tendencies. In Georgia, wine was so abundant that it was even used as a method of payment, and this is what he often received. This is what slowly spiraled his business to ruins and transformed him into an alcoholic. These 2 opposing views, plus the fact his father was an alcoholic, is what led to Joseph having a turbulent childhood. Joseph ended growing up in poverty with an alcoholic father who physically abused both his wife and his son. This abusive behavior continued until Stalin was 12, when his father died in a bar fight. However, this greatly affected him on the long run, leaving him with low self-esteem, family functioning problems, and the potential to develop depression. He was also left with the potential to be an abusive parent. He did end up being an abusive parent, an example being seen with his first son Yakov, who he seemed to resent a lot. Near the end of his life, Yakov was imprisoned in a concentration camp and wished to be rescued. However, Stalin refused to move a finger to send aid. He ended up throwing himself to a barbed wire to commit suicide. Another example was his daughter Svetlana. As a little girl, she was treated marvelously and spoiled by her father. Yet as she got older, she was forced to do many things she didn't want to do, and would also be yelled at often by Stalin and even hit. His upbringing greatly affected him to become the adult he's known to be. But another thing that affected him were the insecurities he developed and had throughout his life, especially in his early years. Joseph was always a boy who didn't have the best health on earth, and his mother was always overprotective about him and always feared he would die like her other 3 children. At the age of 7, he contracted smallpox, and this left him with many permanent scars on his face and a slightly deformed left arm. This left him with an insecurity over his physical appearance that he covered in his photographs and paintings. Photographs of him were airbrushed, and he was also really strict when it came to painted portraits. If he wasn't well depicted, he'd send the artist to get shot. Another thing that affected him was the treatment he got from other children. As a kid, he was bullied and cruelly mistreated a lot by the village children, which ended up with him having a sense of inferiority instilled in him. This feeling is what most likely caused him to begin a quest of greatness and respect. When he became a leader, he finally managed this, mostly with the use of fear and manipulation, and only by showing the general public what he wanted them to see. And last but not least, his mental well-being. It is thought that his mental health also had something to do with all of this. It has never been confirmed 100% whether he had a mental illness or not. However, he did present many symptoms of one. These include violent and savage purges with no reason, and complete indifference towards the value of human life. The latter one was most likely due to the death of his first wife, Yekaterina Svanidze, who was Stalin's great love, along with his mother. Despite being married only for 16 months, her death affected him so much that his comrades had to take away his revolver from him in fear he'd shoot himself. And at her funeral, Stalin himself was quoted to say to a comrade, This feature softened my heart of stone. She died, and with her died my last warm feelings for humanity. Now, this isn't really anything that caused the mental illness. Yet as proof everywhere shows, he didn't really value the human life, not even that of his own children, like rejecting to help his son Jakob, whom he resented despite him being at a concentration camp. There are no prisoners of war, he once said, only traitors to their homeland. He didn't care for the reasons why these traitors were in prison or had to give up. He saw them all in the same evil way. Other symptoms he presented were his mistrusting and terrorizing behaviors, which is thought to be due to paranoia. It is thought he was most likely paranoid because he felt he had the need to protect his narcissist and authoritarian ego, which can be intimately tied with the way he acts due to his insecurities. Also, in the diaries of his physician, it is claimed that he had a mental illness. However, not all the details were given. What is known, though, was the fact that Stalin had atherosclerosis, an illness which hardened the arteries, and his physician said that that could have affected his decision-making. Actions in a person's lives can help them determine where do they want to go in their lives. Yet also the way a person was brought up and treated can influence in that. Stalin didn't have the nicest early years of his life, and this ended up affecting a huge nation while traumatizing and murdering millions of people. It is hoped that nothing of this fashion happens ever again to anyone.